Hey, Carlo. Good to see you back. I definitely recognize you. Good to have you back. And I wanted to address your questions from HotSeat here. So, starting in reverse order, you first asked, what do I do about campaign optimization? Where's that? So, most of your info is going to come from ad management best practices. I believe this is taught, yes, it is taught by one of our lead strategists at IndieX, Andy Hunter. He's a badass, and he talks a lot about how to manage your ads once they are launched. And that includes optimizing your campaign. Optimization is a little bit different now. A lot of times we're running campaign-based optimization and letting it run. But you can, so typically, back in the day when you first took this training, it was like, you're going to shut off ad sets that aren't working. We're using ad set optimization. Nowadays, it's a little bit different. So we're running very broad audiences, not a whole lot of audience testing compared to when you first took the training, because just the automation is so good now. And you're not dealing, like, the interest quality has degraded since iOS 14. So our ability to rely on tight pockets of psychographic data has diminished. But also, the campaign-based optimization has just gotten so much better, where it's like, luckily, we don't really need to. So I say all that to say that you used to shut off audiences, and we were testing audiences to see which ones work best. Nowadays, we are letting the campaign tell us what audiences, if we have multiple, but more often what ads are best. Now, you might think, okay, well, then I just shut off whatever ads aren't working. Because nowadays we're using, back in the day it was just one fan finder. But now, like, for me, I take all of my Instagram reels that I've created for my group, I throw them all in. So lots of different songs, lots of different reels, just to see what works best. It's oftentimes the hook of the reel. So, like, what is the angle? What's the text on the screen? What's the caption? Why are people watching this video? What's the context? That's going to drive a lot more performance difference than audiences used, or like as audiences used to back in the day. And so you're going to find that even within a single song, if you have multiple reels, that one of them is going to outperform the rest. So we're waiting to see what ads do best, but we're not shutting them off like we did back in the day. Instead, when we go to make a new iteration of the campaign, or we're trying to test out some new reels, we're using those best performers as the control. So we're saying, in this campaign that's still running, these are my best ads. I'm going to launch a bunch of new content, see how that does, and I'm trying to outperform the best ad in this group. If I can, then maybe there's a future campaign. I will duplicate the previous campaign. I'll add in my new best performers, take out some of the worst performers, and launch that. So oftentimes we're having multi-ad, multi-song, broad audience campaigns running. We're letting them optimize. We're not touching them. We're not shutting off individual ads. And if we want to introduce something new, or we want to try out a different setup, we're duplicating that campaign, shutting the old one off, and turning the new one on with whatever new settings we're going to use. So I hope that makes sense. So let's get back to your other questions. For a campaign, do I use just 5 audiences that represent the 5 avatars, or do I use, let's say, 50 audiences? No, you do not use 50 audiences. So your avatars, you're looking for scale. So I know you had said in the training, it says all audiences should be within 5 million reach next to each other. I think moreover, you're going for very broad. Okay, so I might try out an audience that's just like hip hop and put all my hip hop song reels in there. That's going to perform a lot better than if I'm granularly targeting, because ultimately Facebook is optimizing your audience so much more for you now. Okay, so within hip hop, it's going to find not only the best audience, but the best audience for each reel. It's going to find me a tight pocket. It's probably tons of hip hop fans for whom I don't want to target. Facebook's going to find that out very quickly. Okay, so you don't have to create as much granular audience targeting as you used to. I would go with cleanly separated big broad audiences, and always include no targeting. You have one audience that's no targeting. Sometimes that outperforms even a single interest target, but you're going for many millions. 5 million's kind of on the low side these days, so keep that in mind. 5 audiences is not a low amount, that's fine. If you can even eke out 5 audiences, you're going for broad scale, minimal overlap, and you want them to cleanly define an avatar. I hope that makes sense. Really, where we used to target, we used to optimize or I guess we used to test audiences against each other. A lot more we're testing ads against each other. Now we'll find, marginal performance differences between audiences, but it's inconsequential. Okay. So I hope that all makes sense. When you can't get an audience that's like big enough, you want to target some granular interest, I would target, so like let's say I was targeting alternative hip hop, okay? And it was only 5 million, or it was less, it was like 1 million. I would just target one, the umbrella of that, hip hop. Okay, and I hope that makes sense, and I wish you luck. I would love to hear when you do run this, how that performs for you against your previous experience with FanFinder. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised at this new setup. So again, you're much better off these days going with multiple pieces of content, multiple ads. You're really trying out different songs and different ways of presenting those songs in content, film, videos. So if you have multiple videos, multiple songs, you're going to find a song that does a lot better. I know that happened with me. It wasn't what we expected. We had a song become one of our top stream songs just off through this process of testing many different songs. And then you're going to go for big, broad audiences, and you're not going to touch your campaign as much. If you're going to change your campaign at all, it'll be weeks down the line. You're going to duplicate your campaign because you have a good idea of how to relaunch it with slightly more optimal parameters. You're going to pay a lot of attention to your data between ads and between ad sets. You're just going to learn about what's working and what's not. And then later on down the line, a couple of weeks, maybe you want to launch a fresh, duplicated version of this campaign with some smart optimizations that you've sussed out in the data. I hope that helps, Carlo. Good to have you back, and I look forward to hearing how it goes.